right? That's kind of not you. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying society. But the polling data told us yesterday that Trump is leading President Biden in all 7 swing states right now. And this announcement comes on the heels of that. It's coming on the heels of both of those things. Is that a little too Staples easy button? It must be this. Okay, fair enough. I've at least addressed the fact that that could be a possibility, so I'm not running from it. Not afraid to talk about that. You know what I mean? But I think it is maybe a possibility that that's what's happening here, right? Ohio's still pretty important. Still a little important. And oh my God, we are suffering some huge issues right now. Support at an all-time low. We're putting out the good economy situation. We're putting out the good economy numbers and do what they want so they can win. Fair. Okay. All right. It's really crazy how mentalities on these types of events have shifted too, by the way. Because even when it happened a year ago, there was 2 ways to look at it. No, this is a presidential moment. You go and you give them that. That's not going to just leave you here alone with this. Or they're dealing with enough problem. The last thing they need is a presidential motorcade, stuffing up all the roads and getting in the way of things. And it's because, again, this is a social media thing, because both people who feel one way or the other on the one side of that, like we just laid out, are screaming all over their timelines about that, right? And so everybody's always kind of left in the, what do we do? Do we go? Do we not? If we go, they're happy. If we don't, they're unhappy. What do we do? Like, nobody's really trying to do the right thing anymore. It doesn't really feel like that. It kind of feels like, well, it's 6-5 and pick them here, but if we're going to win more of than a half a point, then you know what? Swing by Ohio. Let's make sure we didn't give away the store there. It does kind of feel that way. But that's how it feels to me, sitting comfortably in my studio in Canton. My home wasn't affected by this. My community, I mean, yes, close to me, but my community, my street was not affected by this. Would I feel differently if I lived right there? Like, thank God. I mean, yes, it took a year for him to finally figure out we have ice cream stores here, but at least he's coming. Like, right? Like, would I be feeling that way if I lived there? Maybe.
Don't blame the station. We expected you to cancel him by now.
Well, my horoscope said that I shouldn't assume responsibility for anybody but myself.
The Stansberry Show on Rock 106.9.
Welcome back to the Stansberry Show. 9 a.m., I'll rock the bank with you. About an hour from now, I'll give you Rob Zombie tickets. So I had predicted something was going to happen, and it looks like the threat of it is here on our doorstep now. TikTok has been in the crosshairs of people for a while. You may remember about 6 months ago, politicians from across both sides were like, this thing's a problem, we got to shut it down. We got to shut it down. Especially, we shouldn't be having our government employees on it and this and that. It became a problem. You're not hearing about that as much right now as I would imagine election year, and they're looking for the power and the movement of it to help them. And then after that, it's like, hey, this is bad again. We should probably go back and shut that down. Mark my words there, January 22nd, TikTok bad. Like, just do not put that on my bingo board. Your boy's got that one. But I had predicted another issue for TikTok. And it's the fact that everybody was stealing all over it every day. Repurposing music that has a copyright attached to it and using it to sell items. That, for anybody that doesn't know, against the law. And if I were to do that over here, that's a huge problem. Internet, it is now. A music company is saying, we're coming after this now, as I told you that they would. People were walking around going, why are people putting... I kept saying, is going to pull their entire music catalog from TikTok today, accusing the platform of, quote, trying to build a music-based business without paying fair value for the music. That, according to an open letter, is offering to pay for its catalog. Infringes its artists and songwriters' works without providing, quote, meaningful solutions to help them combat the level of AI that other situated major social platforms during the negotiations. The ByteDance owned social giant, that's their parent. What they're saying is what? You're already stealing all our goddamn money, and now what you're going to do is mimic our artists, and where everybody's going to be cut out of the money. I've been saying for years about the music thing. They are going to find a way to shut this faucet off. You were going, and sure enough, every young fan on TikTok is going, oh, whatever, boomer, how many mansions do you need, boomer? All the while screaming they're not being paid for the work that they do. So what are we saying there? If you work hard, it's worth the money. But if you create something I listen to 9,000 times a week, it isn't worth any money. That's what we're saying, which is, of course, crazy. Now, the argument's not necessarily brand new, is it? $15 for a CD and 3 songs are good. Rip off! Huh. Let's do the math. $15 for a CD and only 3 songs are good. So, check out the big brain on Brett, who just screamed out loud that a great song you're going to listen to for the rest of your life, they're not worth $5 a piece.
By now, you're asking yourself, is he trying to be wrong?
You incinerating that I'm dumb?
The Stansberry Show.
8:45 this morning, let's get you into Rob Zombie. That show, Alice Cooper's on that. Filter, Ministry. Pretty solid bill out there at Blas. I saw this the other day. I think it was the day before yesterday, as a matter of fact. And I meant to get to it yesterday. You know, things just kind of fall in your lap, and next thing you know, you're moving things off the rundown, and it just kind of happens. But it's a Rasmussen poll about how you and I, then the 1%ers of the country, and then just like a typical Ivy League graduate. It's broken down in those like 3 groups. How are we feeling about the country right now? In a couple of different, areas. So one of the questions they asked us was this: are your personal finances getting better or worse these days? So the elite 1% of this country, 74% of them said it's getting better. To which I'm willing to bet most people just heard me say that and went, well, duh. Look at how expensive everything is. And we've been sold it's just corporate greed and all of that, right? So like people are going to easily see that as believable, right? 16% of those people, the elite 1%, on their personal finances, better or worse right now, 16% of them said, the same. None of them said that their financial situation is worse right now. I thought that was interesting. So an Ivy League graduate, which you can be that and not necessarily be in the top 1% of this country, right? Are your personal finances better or worse these days? An Ivy League graduate tells us 88% of them said it's better. 9% said the same. 3% of those people said my financial situation's currently worse. Okay, so we got rid of but we walked you through the elites, then the Ivy League graduates, again, a Rasmussen poll here. Now, a typical voter, I would assume that means you and I together, right? Like, that's going to be us. I didn't graduate from an Ivy League university, and I'm definitely not one of the elite 1% of this country, right? My job pays well, I'm paying that well. How are we feeling about our finances? This I thought was interesting, that 40% of those people said the same. I was shocked. Because another 40% said that it's worse. And 20% of those voters said it's getting better. I'm not a great case study in this because I have a salary, yes, and then there are relationships with clients that also bring in some extra income for me as well. And that has always gone up and down, which is this, because that's nuts. Like, I've given you this, I've given you this, I've given you this. Protect me here a little, man. Come on. Like, I've earned this a little bit, right? And I'm always kind of at war with them over that. So, like, my finances can kind of go up and down a little willy-nilly, depending on how advertisers feel at the moment. That's, it's part of the system. I knew that going in. It's not, nobody's got to pull out the violin for me, but it's, that is a little bit of a, debate between me and management there sometimes. So, all right, that's your finances. How do we feel about freedom in this country? So they asked the question, does the United States provide too much individual freedom, too much government control, or is the balance about right? And again, typical voter, you and I, the elite 1%, and an Ivy League graduate. You let me know what you think on it by texting in at 330-450-7625. We'll start with the elite 1% again. 47% of them said, too much freedom. Want to guess that is about some of the mobilization on social media apps they're seeing and a lot of the mentality of eat the rich coming back around on those platforms a little bit again? You want to bet that that had something to do with how they're answering that? I'm going to guess at least a little. Only 21% of the elite 1% said there's too much control from the government. I was kind of surprised by that. And 31% said, it's about right. I'm not sure. Listen to this. A recent Ivy League graduate, the smart ones, and we're the dummies. 55% of them recently polled said, you have too much freedom in your life. 15% said, the government, too much control. And 30% of them said, about right, maybe not sure. A typical voter. Too much control. 16% said too much freedom. And 27% said, about right. Now, I'm just going to guess these freedom questions were answered by people thinking in the back of their mind, guns, abortion, right? Because those seem to be the big talking points when people talk freedoms. I don't ever hear anybody really knocking about, you can shop at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm not sure that's great, right? Like it seems to be like these things, those are the two issues that people really feel like, all right, that's too much freedom. All right, I'm all right with freedom of speech, but I don't know if my neighbor should have a gun in the nightstand. Oh, I'm all right with this, but I don't know if a woman should be able to make that choice, right? It's like that seems to be where we're coming down there. I think it's almost remarkable even that you can ask the question, do you have too much freedom in this country? Not that I want everything to stay the same forever, but I grew up in the 80s, man. If you would have even suggested that people had too much freedom in this country, both sides would have jumped down your throat. What the hell are you talking about? That's what makes this place so great, man. But we're not in love with talking about how great this country is. We're a little bit more obsessed with talking about all the problems this country has. I don't think we should do too much of either. We were a little too rah-rah once upon a time, and now we're a little too, it's all doom and gloom. Everything about living here sucks. Because everything about living here doesn't suck. It doesn't. It's still a pretty good place to live. If it wasn't, I'm not sure we would be having an argument about what the hell is happening in Texas right now. One of these days I'm going to learn how to do this job right.
He was the most hated man in America. And then Kanye came along. Thanks a lot, Kanye. The Stansberry Show on Rock 106.9.
You got Valentine's Day right around the corner. That's always a pricey one. So score yourself $1,000. Make it easier on yourself. Rock the bank with me at 9 a.m. and grab that keyword. That's the first one of the day. We'll have them all day. We were talking about freedom a little bit on the program. There's a new Rasmussen poll out that broke it down by demographics here a little bit. Typical voter, you and I, the elite 1%, and then just a typical Ivy League grad, right? Now, they talked about finances in here. They talked about climate change. We may get to that here in a second. and just talking about the freedoms, right? And the question is, this was pointed out to me on the text line 330-450-7625. It came in at my Facebook page at Stansbury Show as well. That does the United States provide too much individual freedom, too much government control, or is the balance about right? Is a weird way to ask the question, right? I'm willing to bet. I said I'm willing to bet when people heard the word, "Do you have too much freedom in this country or too much government control?" People in their minds, whether they wanted to or not, may have whittled their decision down, or their answer rather, to guns and abortion, because those seem to be very hot button issues. People talk about, well, I have my freedom to do this, or yeah, but maybe you shouldn't have your freedom to do that, right? Those seem to be points of contention, and they are absolutely issues people will vote on, right? I feel like those two, the economy, maybe one or two others, and that's pretty much it, right? As a matter of fact, because of that, you're not allowed to do a whole lot of campaigning near polling centers. And I told my brother the other night, I actually think we need to reverse that now. I think while you're standing in line, I didn't mean to talk about this, and this is probably a crazy idea you guys will hate, but I think while you're standing in line for hours waiting to go vote, they should have to run the presidential debate while you're standing in there. Because you saw that how many days ago before you go vote, and it's like you forgot who said what and did this, and like, let's not pretend everybody who's going to the poll is educated on everything that's happening. What a terrible idea for people to hear some more of the facts before they make that decision, right? Awful idea. Terrible. Couldn't be a worse idea. I know, you guys are probably going to hate that one. You can let me know. 330-450-7625. That's the text line. But about freedom, a typical voter, you and I, we feel, 57% of us anyway, that the government has too much control. I always say about the government, for me as a person, right? Let's just, lay it out like that. That I view them as a necessary evil. We absolutely do need it. I would like them to be involved in my life as minimally as possible. I recognize necessary evil. I'm not necessarily like, get them all out, right? But like, maybe not in every aspect of my life. So I'm not sure I would say today to a pollster they have too much control. What I would say is they're working up to, and they're trying now, moving forward, they're barely even hiding it anymore, that they would like to get too much control. That I would say. That's where my answer would be. Not that I'm going to be right about that. Right? I know plenty of people show up here every day for the purpose of disagreeing with me. So I know not all of you are like, yeah, Stansbury's got this one nailed like he does everything else, right? Like, I'm well aware of that. So I'm not sure they have too much control right now, but they definitely want too much control, and they're working towards that control every minute of every day. And I would worry about that. Now, an Ivy League graduate, 55% of them said, I believe here, too much freedom. You and I have too much freedom. That would include them too. Now, how much you want to bet that when people answered these types of questions, they were thinking back about people that they did not like? I remember that fight yesterday I got on X about blah, 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 and that stupid person thought, and that dirtfoot hillbilly, that basket of deplorables, oh, well, yeah, and you stupid stinking libs, and blah, blah, blah. People are going to think about the person that they hate and go, I don't want that person to be able to do what they're doing that annoys me. Too much freedom. And I think, honestly, an Ivy League graduate would be more likely to think, you know what, I wish well, we're not going to be neighbors with them, let's be honest. But, like, I wish the people who lived in the other end of my town weren't able to do what they want to do. People are going to answer this question thinking, well, they're not going to come and limit my freedoms. They're going to limit the freedoms of the dummies. They're not going to limit mine. I believe some of those Ivy League people are making the mistake of thinking that they're not going to come for your freedom. They want to fine you. They want to jail you. They want to be doing a lot. They kind of want to get a little bit back to the moral side of society a little bit. The mistake they're making is they start talking about God and this and all of that, where it's just like, dude, you could just talk about protecting society from one another without necessarily going to God, because I think it will limit some of the people you're trying to get on your side to vote your way. Now in Oklahoma, maybe not, right? Like maybe not. Maybe going to the God thing is exactly how you win. Fair enough. I bring it up because of this. Because 55% of those Ivy League graduates have told me that we have too much freedom. Yet if I was to tell them, okay, cool, why don't you vote for laws like what Oklahoma's doing to limit the ability to create and to view pornography? What? No, can't. What do we doing? Oh my God, stay out of this stuff. You don't know. Those same people are going to cry about government overreach at that point. None of this comes down to anybody being right or wrong. This is what I've always been saying. People want the right to do what they want to do while restricting the right of somebody else doing what they want to do. Some of you know what I'm going to say right now because I probably say it too often. Freedom is messy because your neighbor has it too. That's the problem. Now, we've always had these kind of fights in this country, but they are getting worse. And if you don't think it's because we know what everybody thinks every second of every single day, I'm sorry, you're a little bit out of your mind. Back in the day, it was like once every couple of years you knew your neighbor was an idiot because they had the sign in their front yard for the opposite candidate. Oh, I always knew Bill and Sally were dopes. I told you when we went over there and they tried to give us that goddamn fruitcake, Bo. I told you they were morons, right? Like, that's kind of what happened. But now everybody's just screaming about this stuff as a man is screaming about it to you right now, right? But like, that's kind of what's happening. People just assume if I tell you there's too many freedoms, it's these freedoms down there that those slee stacks are using. I don't want them to have that. Everybody, so you can't tell me we have too much freedom, and then when I tell you, cool, I'm siding with the government, I want porn to end today. No, you can't do that. So which freedoms do I have that are too much? That's my problem with this kind of poll. Is, okay, great, this was your answer. Can I see some examples? And even break it down maybe 4 columns. This one, that one, that one. Here's a list. Are these too many? Is this too many? Because as a guy who, by the way, who's told you I want to get the government as far out of my life as I can, but I'm not sure I can. Every day I drive down the freeway, back and forth. I take 77 every morning to get back and forth to work, as most of you probably do. Or at least a large portion. I'll stop short of most. And every day I see a car bouncing up and down because the shocks and struts are bad, the ball tires, this and that, and like that literally could kill somebody driving next to me. Or me. And yet, when we have automotive check places where it's like, well, let's make sure you're safe to go on the road, I'm like, get out of my pocket, government. Get out. I mean, so it's like, which one is it? We're all this person, is the point. We all want to do whatever it is we want to do. But when we see somebody else doing something, we're like, oh, you shouldn't be allowed to do that, man.
Back to the Stansberry Show. Rock 1069.
Just give me a couple of minutes here and I'll get you those Rob Zombie tickets. Alice Cooper on that show too. Ministry. Filter. That's a pretty damn good one out of Blossom. Late August on that. We'll get you here in that into a moment. Nope. I messed up that whole damn sentence, didn't I? Yeah, I sure did. Whatever. We've been talking about freedom because 55% of Ivy League graduates believe that you have too much freedom. And I've been saying what a lot of you have been thinking. It's like, well, dude, everybody thinks like, you know, I'm all right to do whatever I want, but make sure we restrict some of that stuff out there I'm seeing I don't like. I always use the COVID example here, the masking, right? Now, we know it's, I mean, everybody's about facing on how great those masks were. I mean, literally a woman who was saying we should lock people up in prison if they don't wear one when they leave their house. Just yesterday said, yeah, it ended up ruining the development of my child. Yeah, that story was pretty wild yesterday. She went, I mean, that woman got dragged all day yesterday and she kind of deserved it. But I said back then in that whole like situation that why it's an issue is because everybody thinks, oh, you better wear that when you go in there. But it's just me and I forgot mine and it fell out of my pocket on the way into the store and I'm just going to be here for 5 minutes. It's just me. I'll be fine. Right? And that's kind of how freedom works too. Well, I want to do what I want to do. You know, you don't, but I want to restrict that. And I always talk about how freedom can be messy, right? Because we all have access to it. And, you know, this has come in off of the text line. Also my Facebook page as well. A couple of people have come around the same points, which is I'll take mess and feel as if I can do what I want versus, again, the word socialism, it gets thrown around too easily here. Roads are socialism. As a person who does not want to see us turn into a total socialist country, and I don't at all, let me tell you a piece of socialism we have that I don't think people use enough. The library. That's a phenomenal resource that, yes, you pay for with taxes and all that, but like at the end of the day, you don't really, I mean, it's not like they're like, hey, the library cost you $300 this month. The amount of knowledge on a shelf in a library All you gotta do is go in there, swipe your card, take any book you want. Movies, CDs, all kind of stuff. I actually went back and forth with somebody on X the other day. Guy's got a pretty large following. And he was talking about buy your books, physical copy, right? That's normally my thing. I was like, he's like, who goes to the library? So I posted a photo of the last 3 books I took out of the library. I said, well, I do. It's a phenomenal resource. He said, yeah, you should own your books and then maybe donate them around, or maybe read them more than one time. Okay. Not every book I read do I believe I'm going to read again down the road. Some I do. Some I do, sure. I think I've already read 4 books this month. I'm doing pretty good. That was like one of my things I wanted to kind of work on this year. Was reading more for leisure than I normally do. Let's not get sidetracked on me. But that's socialism. And I believe the library benefits us. I also believe it could benefit us more if more of us, myself included, I'm not yelling at you, I'm not thinking I'm above you, myself included, spent more time there. That's socialism, right? So like there are places where I'm like, yeah, all right, give me that. Where other times I'm like, well, don't take all my money and give it to somebody else who didn't work for it. Don't do that. Like, let's not do that. Let those people have access to the library like I have. Fair enough. Absolutely. Give them that. Yeah, let them drive on the roads. Fair. Yeah, absolutely. Keep my money, my goddamn money, though. Right? Like, I'm not. So I want to stop short of that. And I would agree with you mostly that, yeah, I'll take the downsides. Like, once upon a time, I heard this. The First Amendment. If you can go to the street corner, this is back when, well, major metropolitan cities still do have newsstands, but if you can go to the street corner and buy pornography for $5, is that not too high of a price to pay for the right to free speech? And the answer was no. But $5 is too much to pay for pornography. And I kind of like that answer. I did. Because what I took from that, and maybe I'm an idiot and heard it wrong, it's possible, happens a lot, is this is about personal accountability. And because I'm uncomfortable with something doesn't necessarily mean that you should not have access to it. I say I mean me, I mean anybody, right? I mean, I think we kind of know that. And so I've always looked at it like, yeah, man, there's going to be some downsides to me being able to say what I want, to me being able to produce the kind of content I want. There's going to be some downsides to that. And sometimes those downsides are going to be that somebody I disagree with can say whatever they want. You don't hear this as much as you used to, but this used to be the 11th commandment. I may not agree with you, but I'll fight to my death for your right to be able to say it. We don't say that anymore because of how many people are saying things. You used to say that because it was a way to end a conversation with an idiot talking too loud at the end of the bar. Right? Like, all right, man, we got it. Shut up. I know the television talks to you, tinfoil guy. We got it. We got it. Right? But now, everybody's opinion is the only thing we consume. Myself, yourself, I mean, right? And so I think that's why people are starting to get a little bit more, you can't, all right. Because it used to just be the one crazy person who would say like wild stuff, or like, all right, man, I kind of believe in your right to say it. Luckily, most people aren't that person. But with social media, man, that person finds that other one. And then they find that person. And now there's 3 of them, right? And now you got to keep your eyes on stuff. And like that, and I think that's what makes people uncomfortable about the conversation thing right now. Is that conversations that used to be fringe, you know, trench coat mafia stuff that never really saw the light of day, really, are now the trending topics on social media, and it's freaking people out. And so I think that's where a lot of people are starting to worry about, you know, whether or not you should be able to say this, or whether or not you should be able to do this, or... And always watch when people are looking to limit what you're saying. Because some of those same people are like, no, dude, you gotta let Kyrie Irving tell everybody the world's flat, man. He's speaking his truth, man. Speaking his truth, man. And yet those same people are like, you can't say that. It's like, well, I kind of feel like you can't say the earth is flat. You know why? Because it isn't, goddammit. That's why. Rob Zombie is headed to Blossom. Let's get you in right now. Caller 12. 330-450-7625. Toll free. 800-243-7625.